Hello, everybody. I'm Sean Reynolds from Sportsnet, about to be joined by Ken Weeb from the Winnipeg Free Press. Together we are Kenny and Renny. This is the Kenny and Renny post-game show after. Is this a little bit of a wake-up call? Are we already getting into the pristine roofing wake-up call, and we're not even 45 seconds into the show here? I think so. I think the Winnipeg Jets got a little bit of a pristine roofing wake-up call here tonight, so you know what that means. Time to give North End Rick the pristine roofing wake-up call at 1-204-981-6289. You don't want to give North End Rick the call. You can give it to 1-204-237-7663. But hey, he's the guy you want to talk to for everything that you need as far as roofing, exteriors, siding, all those different kind of things. And just a reminder about their campaign to give away a free roof. So it's one of those situations where you have a neighbor, you have someone you know, a house you pass by on the street on your way home, someone who looks like they need a new roof and aren't in a position to do that for themselves. Pristine Roofing wants to help. They want to give whoever that person is a hand. So you can get a hold of North End Rick at 1-204-981-6289, and he can help. He can help deliver brand new roof to someone in need, because that's what Pristine Roofing is trying to do. Good on them for trying to do that. Anyways, Pristine Roofing wake up call. I'll say this: the Winnipeg Jets. We've talked all this about them. What was it? They would won 7 of their last 8 games, or something like that. I think this is a game that probably shows a little bit that the wrestling character that I've been working on lately, the truth teller. I think there was a lot of the truth telling going on the last little while when we talked about the Jets, even though they're being on this winning streak, their standard slipping. Eventually the Jets started talking about that over the last couple of games. Rick Bowness talked about it. Brandon Dillon talked about it after their last win. This is why these kind of things are important. So yes, the Jets won 7 of their last 8 games, and they went on a heater before that 5-game loss they had before that. But I find this interesting. The Jets now, in this streak, since Christmas time, have essentially had a cakewalk of a schedule, and a lot of the wins they've racked up against some pretty bottom-feeding teams. The teams over the playoff line that the Winnipeg Jets have played, of their last 6 games against teams over the playoff line, the Winnipeg Jets have lost 5 of them. So what I'm seeing from this team for the vast majority of the time since after Christmas is a team that schedule has allowed its standard to slip, has allowed this team to not necessarily play to the top of their game, has hidden them behind a lot of people who say, they're finding a way to win, and good teams find ways to win and all this kind of stuff. But the fact of the matter is the Jets have not fared well against the teams who matter. And I thought tonight that first period was really a good example of a team that walked into this game having, not reached their standard for a number of games before that, and then just found themselves in the middle of a pressure test against the Dallas Stars and didn't work out as well as they would have hoped to in that first period. Now, I don't necessarily think that the scales were tipped as far as people thought it was. I do think that the Jets in this game, in the first period, they were outworked a little bit. The Logan Stankoven turnover that he creates against Mason Appleton for that third goal. The Jets do this all the time with their back pressure and their back checking. And when they do it, we talk about what great work they're putting in and all of these kind of things. And then here I was seeing a lot of negative talk about Mason Appleton. I mean, these kind of things happen. Sometimes the other team just makes good plays. And Logan Stankoven, boy, oh boy, talk about another find for the Dallas Stars in their drafting. That scouting staff, like the Jets, gives the Jets a run for their money. 2 teams that really, really know how to find value in the draft. Clearly, Cole Perfetti's turnover at the beginning, not the kind of play that you want to make. These are the things I'm talking about, allowing your standard to slip. You probably get away with a pass like that against the Chicago Blackhawks, maybe even against the St. Louis Blues, probably against the San Jose Sharks, teams that the Jets have been making hay against. You don't get away with that play against the Dallas Stars. And if I'm being honest, I don't love the positioning of Vladislav Nemesnikov where he is to receive that pass. He needs to be closer to the boards in that situation there if you're asking me. So I don't pin this all on Cole Perfetti, but based on the talks that we've been having about where he is, not necessarily a good look for a player who can't seem to produce points, whose bread and butter in the NHL is going to be about producing points, and now finds himself on the fourth line. You can't, in a game like that, be allowing your fourth line to burn you. That's what happens in this situation. So another tough one for Cole Perfetti. Vladdy Nemeskov, I thought he had a really good game. I'm going to try and sum this up as quick as I can. I actually thought Connor Hellebuyck was the best goalie in that game, the old Renny standard that he talks about now and again. Jake Ottinger, I didn't think, even though the Jets pushed quite a bit harder in that second period, I don't think he was overly tested in that game. The Jets started to make it a little more confusing for him in the second period, getting bodies to the net. But for the most part, I didn't see him scrambling often. The Jets weren't making a move from side to side. So to me, there needed to be a little bit more of a challenge there. But the be all and the end all of this game is that the Dallas Stars are a team the Jets have now lost 3 goals to. And at MBHA hockey, plug your ears, because I know it hurts your heart to hear me to say it, but the Dallas Stars are a good hockey team. The Jets are trying to find the standard against that team. They need to find the standard against that team, because from what I take away from the Colorado Avalanche, regardless of where the Winnipeg Jets finish, whether it's first or second or third, I don't have a ton of faith in the Colorado Avalanche hockey team as they stand, unless they did something dramatic at the trade deadline. So in my mind, if the Winnipeg Jets are going deep in the playoffs this year, it is going to take beating the Dallas Stars in either the first, more likely the second round. And the Jets haven't found the recipe against them so far. They can't score against them. Dallas, when they do get the lead, are shutting it down fairly efficiently. All those people who wanted to hang and say, okay, the Winnipeg Jets had a slow start in the second period, they were the better team and all that, they threw out the window in the third period, where the Dallas Stars really were the team that made the biggest push. There's no doubt about it who was the better team on the ice here tonight. Jets are still, in my mind, first place. They've got a higher points percentage. They're only 2 points behind Dallas, and they've got 4 games in hand. But this was, if you want to get to these things, every game this year against the Dallas Stars has been a measuring stick game. And for me, the Winnipeg Jets, they're making the playoffs. I still think they're winning the division, to be quite honest with you. I don't have a lot of qualms about them doing that. But for the Winnipeg Jets now, it's about finding a way to prepare to win games just like this game here tonight. And the Jets haven't found a way to do it against this team so far this year. I guess if you're stacking it all up and you're taking a look at the teams the Jets are likely going to have to get past to get to the Stanley Cup, which is where they want to go, I'm very, very, I don't want to say certain. I'm of very much the belief that Dallas Stars will be one team they have to get through. And then it's going to be another team like the Vegas Golden Knights or the Edmonton Oilers, all teams with wins against the Jets this year. Jets with only 1 win against any of those teams so far this year. So a standard game. Jets are yet to meet the standard, despite how well they're doing in the standings. That's my take on the whole thing. Time to bring in Ken Weeb, the man with the best music in the business, for his take on the whole thing. Here comes Kenny, everybody. Kenny, only one of us here tonight is looking like a Vittorio Rossi, man. That's clearly you. That tie, I've seen that tie before. That is a Vittorio Rossi tie, and a beauty that I handed over to Ken Weeb, because look, it brings out his eyes better than it brings out mine. I've known enough about this kind of stuff because I've learned about color patterns and things like that from our main man, Frankie. So you know what to do. If you want a guy who can even teach a dimwit like Renny how to put together a good color patch so that a guy like Ken Weeb looks like $1 million right now, you want to head over down to Vittorio Rossi. on Corden Ave, you walk in, loudly proclaim Kenny and Renny sent you. Ask for Frankie and the boys. I wonder, does anyone actually, when they go there, loudly proclaim that we sent you? Because if you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. That's what you're supposed to be doing. But anyways, loudly proclaim Kenny and Renny sent you. Ask for Frankie and the boys. They'll do you up right, and you'll get like gorgeous clothes like what Ken's wearing and that tie. It's good stuff. Ken, what's going on, man? What do you think of that game?
Well, what I thought was that the Jets did what you've been asking Rick Bowness they've been doing for the last 2 weeks, and he finally had an outpouring of truth serum, I think. I mean, he had definitely said this morning he was, things had slipped, and they needed to improve, and they would improve, and they did not improve today, or they certainly did not improve in the first period today, is what I would say. This is crazy, and this is not rose-colored glasses talking here. The Jets actually had a good start to the game, Sean, but as soon as Mason Marchment got behind the Jets' defense after that redirection chance by Alex Iafallo, they completely went away from their game and started to do the things that had been giving them trouble, even though they've been able to gloss them over with 4 wins in a row and 7 out of 8 against inferior opponents. No matter, the Jets aren't calling them inferior opponents, but they're below the playoff line. And Rick Bowness told me this morning, Sean, if we play like that against elite teams, we're not going to win hockey games.
There we go.
He saw the future, and the future was not kind to the Winnipeg Jets in terms of, being sharp and on their game. They were not on their game. There were moments, sure, but they did not play Winnipeg Jets hockey. The slipping standard was slipping in those areas. It's not like the Jets got steamrolled, but they allowed the door to be open, and once they left it ajar, the Stars kicked it right down. And Sean, you're right. This game's 5-1 without Connor Hellebuck in the game playing the way that he did.
Before the empty netter.
That's what I mean, yes. I mean, it's 4-1 in the game, but this game could have been a blow. It could have been a blowout, no doubt about it. I didn't like the defensive zone play. I mean, I know what you're saying, that the winger should be lower, but Cole Perfetti can't make that pass unless the winger is where you want him to be. For me personally,
you're right. Okay, you're right, Ken. Sorry, I'm just going to stop you.
I know what you're saying. Sorry,
you're right. I think he needs to be lower. I think he also needs to be more closer to the boards. So
agreed.
Give him a better outlet. But he
wasn't pressured. Right. He wasn't pressured. He had the puck. He looked up and he kind of blindly threw it.
I didn't want it to all fall.
No, it's totally not.
And to be honest, I think Vlad Nemesnikov was the Jets' best player on the ice tonight.
Oh yeah.
So I don't mind him sharing a little bit in the blame on that goal, because otherwise he had a phenomenal night. But I guess I just wanted to make sure, like, it's an overarching symptom. Like, it's an easier pass to make if the guy's where he's supposed to be, because he's not along the boards. Perfetti is trying to go around the check, off the boards, and to the player. He doesn't quite get it there, and it's a good forecheck. Teams like this aren't going to allow you to make plays like that, whereas teams like San Jose and Chicago and Arizona are. So it's a little bit of the Jets coming out of the gates and not being used to being under that kind of pressure. But I just wanted to make sure, because I don't know. It's like the Hellebuck thing. I remember everyone was saying that I was saying that Hellebuck was terrible. I've been saying this for the longest time. I think Connor Hellebuck is the Vezina Trophy winner this year, but I'm not afraid to point out the idea that he's benefiting from the Jets, and I'm not calling him down by doing that. So I know when I've talked about Cole Perfetti and how he's ended up where he is, there's probably a segment of people out there who think, mean old Sean is being mean to Cole Perfetti and trying to say he should be out of the league, and people are already defending him and stuff like that. I try and just call it as I see it, but I want to make sure that it's known that Cole Perfetti isn't on an island, but he's the main player in that turnover. But there was support that should have been there that was not there. Sorry.
No, my fault. And the other, I'll be happy to share the blame also, because it happened right in front of me. And I'm not blaming Neil Pionk for trying to jump up ice. He's expecting the play to be made. The Jets are being told to activate. But in this case, the activation by Pionk creates that odd man rush down low, and Brendan Dillon did the best that he could. And Jason Robertson, this is hilarious, Sean. Jason Robertson is almost a point per game player who just scored his 20th goal, but we're all looking at it like he's having a down year because he was over 100 points last year. So You can't leave the puck on the stick of a guy who had over 100 points last year. And again, I'm not blaming Neil Pionk. His job is to activate, but that's why you can't turn the puck over. That's why Rick Bowness has been pounding the table about puck management. That cannot be turned over at the blue line when the other defenseman is between the blue line and the red line. Again, and self-inflicted wounds has been a common theme. There was a bad line change in there on one of the goals, and then, as you mentioned, I think already, Mason Appleton, that puck, he's in control of the puck and then lost it, right? I mean, plays got to be made. Anyways, it was not a good effort by the Jets. I mean, there were some things they did well, and again, for the folks, just to clear it up, if you didn't happen to see the post game with Rick Bowness and myself, Gabriel Velarde was not benched for the third period, folks. Gabriel Velarde is hurt, and he probably won't play on Saturday. He's not hurt, he is hurt. Upper body. He didn't have a shift in the third period. I think his last shift was with 5:06 in the second. He did not have a good game today. That's true. But this isn't Rick Bowness picking on Gabriel Velarde. That's a big issue if he can't go. During the TV timeouts or broadcast timeouts, Gabriel Velarde was trying to get his legs going, but it wasn't his legs. He was at the end of the bench trying to encourage his teammates, but he couldn't get out on the ice for the third, and now he's in a question mark, and it's back-to-back on the weekend. So, I mean, now you're without one of the top-line players for it probably at least one game and likely two. So guess what that means? That means that Cole Perfetti is probably going to get himself some top 6 minutes again, and now it's up to him to step up and do something with those minutes. He did get some of those minutes in the third period today. Again, outside of the pass, I saw signs from Perfetti again. But right now, Sean, we've been talking about this for a long time. The Jets scored plenty during the 4-game winning streak, but when they play teams that are very sound and stingy defensively, sometimes there are issues with them being able to score in those games. So that's a big thing coming up. There's 1 week until the deadline, and that was a hot topic today, obviously with the Stars picking up Chris Tanev, who we both had on the wish list of the Winnipeg Jets, or anticipated that he would be on their wish list. As Pete DeBoer said this morning, pretty much every contender in the NHL wanted to acquire Chris Tanev, and not only do the Jets not get him, he goes to the team that they're 0-3 against. And Sean, I'm here to tell you, and we talked about this last show, Chris Tanev is going to be to Dallas what Sean Monahan is to the Jets. Every single area that the Stars need a check mark, he's going to provide that. Mm-hmm. Physical guy, high character guy. You can play him with Heiskanen. You can play him with Harley. You can play him with Lindell. And the guy's going to give you 22-plus minutes and be a warrior. So, anyways, there's a lot to work out here as we continue. I'm going to step back from the table, and then we're going to dig in, because there's a lot of things that we're going to need to talk about here today after this game.
For sure. Before we do that, do you want to give Sweet Lou a shout out?
Sure. For folks who have realty needs they'd like to have met, whether you're buying, selling, maybe curious what the house on that corner might be going for or worth, contact Lou Ferlin at Roll LePage Dynamic Realty, 204-791-9971, or at the office, 204-989-5000. His email is lou@loufurlan.ca. That's LOU at LOUFURLAN.ca. Lou Ferlin, excellent realtor, excellent human being, and excellent supporter of the community, including this podcast. If you have realty needs you'd like to have met, just like we tell you with Vittorio Rossi, tell Sweet Lou that Kenny and Renny sent you, and he will take care of all matters regarding real estate.
To your point about the Stars acquiring Tanev, Logan Stankomen coming into that lineup, so essentially, if you're the Winnipeg Jets, and so that's something we're going to have to get to here with a week to the trade deadline. I'll be you're going to be there too. Yeah, we'll both be in Seattle with the Jets when that happens. The Stars go out and they address a need on defense. They've got Ottinger, and goalie hasn't had the best year, but my guess is the Ottinger, you'll see the best version of him come playoff time. the Stars are an extremely deep team. Like, they've got an extremely deep lineup, and if they were looking to add to their lineup, Logan Stankoven came in tonight and looks like he's one of their better players. Like, they don't need, this is that whole thing about how the Jets were talking about, okay, well, we won't add anyone and we'll just wait till when Kyle Connor was injured, he'll come back and he'll be our trade deadline acquisition. Well, this is a trade deadline acquisition for the Dallas Stars. Logan Stankoven is a phenomenal player. He was destroying the NHL after he destroyed the WHL. He's been on a crash course with the league. I'll be honest with you, Ken, I just saw a report that came out and it was talking about the best prospects outside the NHL. And I looked at the list, and the one thing I looked at right off the bat was, if Logan Stankoven is not one of the top 3 players on this list, I don't take this list very seriously.
Get a new list.
Yes, yeah. because Stankoven, you knew he was coming, and now you've seen, and talk about a player that, okay, that's great if he's putting the puck in the net for you, which he is. 3 goals in his first 4 games with the Stars. But do you see how often they used him tonight? Do you see how often he was on the ice? And never mind when he's on the ice, do you not notice him every single time he steps on the ice? And I feel a little bit different about that play by Appleton. I just think sometimes players make good plays. Appleton had no idea Stankoven was coming. Stankoven,
No.
with the crazy good hustle there, makes that play happen. I think sometimes you just have to concede that good players make good plays, and Logan Stankoven did that. But just to the point of the Jets, and what they need to address, which we're going to get into here. This is kind of my way of getting into it, but talking about, like people say, I think the West runs through Dallas at some point, and Dallas is the team that went out and got a really good guy on defense. They've got their goaltending, they've got depth, and now they're adding a guy like Stankoven. Boy, oh boy, they've done their work. If the Stars didn't do anything else between now and the end of the trade deadline, I think that they've taken care of a good chunk of their business. I don't know that they need to add. I think they can be comfortable and see if something falls into their lap. Is this a game that proves to you that the Jets need to make a move? Because I know a lot of people in the chat room, Nick Lynham, talking about Pionk being exposed on a night like this. We've talked before about Perfetti and whether someone maybe has to come in if he doesn't necessarily fit that 4th line role and can't find his way up into the 2nd line or the 1st line, which he's not going to do with a performance like he had tonight. Are the Jets in must-add territory?
Yeah, quickly. And again, I'm not saying it was a bad play by Appleton. It just was. It's another example of puck management, a turnover in the neutral zone in a game where they were talking about how dangerous the Stars are off the rush. When again, I agree totally. That's a great play by Stankoven, and I love the way that he played. And I'm going to be honest with you. This is my first time watching him live, and I'm going to tell you, Sean, Rick Bowness got my attention. You know how much time we spent around the Tampa Bay Lightning. When Rick Bowness, his answer to me this morning,
exactly what he's going to say
is that he reminded him of Braden Point. The guy's been in the league for 5 minutes, but he's exactly right. Like Rick Bowness is not prone to gross exaggeration, but when you get compared to Braden Point, with 3 games on your NHL resume, and Sean, for the people who are unaware, Rick Bowness is fairly familiar with Braden Point because he was there when he broke into the NHL. Yeah. So you're not just giving this lip service. This is genuine enthusiasm for a player who gets the whole undersized, can he do it at the NHL level, was dominating the American Hockey League. And that's, you know what, I think that's going to be one of the best things for him. Not that Stankoven needed it. He's a guy who had to work for everything that he's had. As a guy who covered the American League for 10 years, I love that they sent him to the American League and made him go through that heavy lifting as a young player, and he dominated at the level. So good on him. But yeah, I mean, back to the original question about the Jets. I couldn't agree more. And Sean, two things. You and I have been talking about this for months now. And I wrote about it for the Free Press as my pregame story. And there was some fascinating answers from both rooms today and from Jim Nill, the general manager of the Stars. Guys are kind of trying to downplay the whole thing because, A, you don't want to be looking like you don't want to play someone, but let's get real. If you're the Jets, you'd like to avoid seeing Dallas as long as possible. So
Yeah.
in this case, you need to finish first if
Yeah.
you're the Jets and you want to achieve that. Matt Duchene gave a great answer. When there's 3 teams that can win the division legitimately, and you can avoid having to watch those 2 teams beat themselves over the head potentially for 7 games in a first round before you potentially play them in the second round, of course you would take that every single time. But, at the same time, Duchesne was quite frank. You can't be an idiot and say you don't want to play someone, give them bulletin board material, and then watch the 8 seed steamroll you because you
Right.
weren't ready to play them. But
Yep.
I think it means the Jets better buckle down in the last 24 games if they want to be a team that goes on a long run. That's not to say that they can't. And as I mentioned, if a team wants to win the Stanley Cup, you're going to have to beat 4 great opponents, which again is what Adam Lowry told me this morning. They know that. But there's a big difference between facing a 7 or 8 seed and facing Colorado or Dallas, or in the Pacific, if you got to face Edmonton or Vegas or Vancouver, depending on how that works out. And you can't even count out LA yet, to be quite frank. So in terms of the trade deadline, Sean, absolutely the Jets should be adding. They know it. You and I know it. And the rest of the league knows it. That's not to say the Jets are not a bad team. They're a very good team. But at the very least, they need to add some depth, whether that's on the back end, and they need to potentially add some scoring. So for me, no doubt the Jets need to add and should add. And I get it. That's tough for some guys on the periphery of the roster, but this is not a participation ribbon league. If the Jets, it's wide open to win for them and other teams, and that means they're going to have to add to this roster. I'm not saying go out and add 10 players by any stretch, but I think they probably need to add 1 defenseman and potentially 1 forward, probably a bit more size. I'm not saying the Jets didn't get pushed around, but they certainly didn't impose their will on the Stars today. And again, you want to get out of the West, you're going to have to beat a couple teams that are really physical.
I just wanted to bring something up here because I've seen it happen a couple of times. Dorian Wasakase says McGroarty can be our Stankoven, or will we get in our own way? Don't do this. We've seen this before. This to me reminds me of the Logan Stanley is the next Zdeno Chara conversation that was happening here. Listen, I don't think it's good to put this kind of pressure on someone, and just like it's the same thing that we've been talking about for a long time. It's always the next Jets players coming up, and they take, like, I remember the Ville Heinola, and I don't know what he's going to become, but I remember the Ville Heinola comparisons to Colorado's young star defenseman. Right. And just at that time, it's like people need to pump the brakes on this. Like McGroarty, you don't know what's going to happen. You definitely don't know that you can just grab him and throw him in. And you're not listening to what Ken just said here. Like Logan Stankoven was probably ready to play in the NHL at the beginning of this year. I remember being surprised at the beginning of the year that he did not start with the Stars, but they put him in the AHL and they let him season and they let him build his confidence so that he's ready to do this. Like that there's a step to be taken on the way. Kyle Connor played in the AHL before he came up and played with the Winnipeg Jets. Josh Morrissey, Adam Lowry, go on and on and on. These players come up. So like this is a lot to ask from a player. And, you know, 1 in 100 times someone's going to be right with this. And a guy like McGroarty will come up and he'll just hit and he'll go and he'll be phenomenal. And he'll be great. But 99 out of 100 times what you're doing in this case is you're making a completely unfair comparison to Rutger McGroarty, asking him to come up and start doing immediately what we're seeing right now from Logan Stankoven. So you just you can't do that. Everyone looks at their prospects and thinks that they're the next big thing, and I get it. And everyone wants their young people to play and be thrown in and just get into it and that kind of stuff. Like Logan Stankoven walks in and is blowing up the NHL because he was over ready for the NHL. if you pulled up McGroarty, I'm not saying he couldn't be a really good player, but starting out and just like saying, come on, Jets, get your act together, bring this guy up and put him in the lineup. That is a lot to ask. I don't think people understand how much they're asking. Ken, I'd like
just quickly, Jim Nill worked for the Detroit Red Wings for a long time, who are known for marinating their prospects with the Grand Rapids Griffins until they're ready. And I love a lot about Rutger McGroarty's game. His game should translate to the National Hockey League, but you are, as Sean said, you're asking a lot to expect him to jump in and be a top 6 player immediately. I think he can come into the lineup and be an effective player. I don't know if that's on the 4th line or the 3rd line. Eventually he's going to be a top 6 player eventually, but I don't think the Jets are counting on him being a guy that plays on the top 6 for game 1 of the Stanley Cup playoffs unless something changes dramatically. Anyways, we'll be talking about Rutger McGroarty plenty for the next several months. And years for that matter.
And hold on a second here. Justin Laniak says here, Leafs did it with Matty Nyes last year. I'd at least give Rucker a chance to grab a spot. I'm not saying don't do this.
Oh, yeah.
I'm saying stop trying to compare him to a guy who walks into the league and has been over-ripened to the degree that when he gets brought in is put in a successful situation, by the way, right? Like, you're also talking about making sure that a guy comes in. Like, who was he on the ice with tonight? Jamie Benn was on his wing.
And Wyatt
right?
Johnston, who was one of the Calder candidates last year.
Exactly. So you get a Calder candidate and you get a former league MVP, and that's how you break into the league. Like, again, this is so Justin, I don't disagree with you. I don't disagree and I thought Matty Nyes looked good with the Leafs last year. I'm not saying that this can't be done. I'm saying the automatic comparison that we see, well, this player can be that player. It's a lot to ask. The expectations that you want to put on Rutger McGroarty are, hey, maybe he can play some games down the stretch. And then if he comes in and he shows, well, hey, maybe he can stick around for a little while. And then if he ends up being effective to that degree that you think you can take him into the playoffs, hey, maybe we give him some games in the playoffs. And if he sticks there, you go there. You don't say this guy is this guy. Same as, again, I was hearing that Ville Heinola was Cale Makar. Hey, if Ville Heinola is Cale Makar, he's a little bit behind the development curve right now. So all the people who are making those comparisons, you're a number of years off if it is going to happen. So Ken, specifics, do you see specific spots? Like, are you targeting, like, if I'm looking for someone, I think one of the things that I'm looking for, and yes, I've talked about busting up, not busting up the 3rd line, but I would think a Mason Appleton is a player I would be targeting to maybe move down the lineup to get someone onto that 3rd line who can add some grit, but also a scoring punch to try and get that line going again, because as we've seen that they have not been scoring the way they did at the beginning of the year. I wonder if there's an expectation that they would regroup and recapture what we saw at the beginning of the year, or if it's the idea that as the year goes on, things get more defensive and it gets harder for a line that looked to be outscoring their past production in the NHL, players like Lowry, players like Appleton, maybe not so much Nino Niederreiter, but is it too much to ask for them to get back there given how tight things get into the playoffs?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, Mason Appleton plays hard, and Rick Bowness, we know how he feels about his defensive game and how he feels about him with Adam Lowry. So, I mean, I'm not 100% certain. I would say that there would be a chance that Alex Iafallo, I've been pounding this drum for a long time when I've talked about Nino Niederreiter potentially moving up. Alex Iafallo is a guy that could potentially slide into that spot at some point, but I'm not certain that's the direction they're going to go.
Yeah, that was my original at the beginning of the year. That was my original 3rd line.
Yeah, so I mean, and the other part of that too, Sean, they also could go out and get a centerman and move Nemestikov. Like, we know that Nemestikov has played with Lowry last year when he arrived. And they went up against Connor McDavid and did a great job against them. Also, so then you bring in a guy maybe like Tommy Novak from the Nashville Predators. We know how Winnipeg feels about the Minnesota Mafia. 4 years at U of M. I mean, he's a guy that made it through the American Hockey League. 17 goals, 43 points in 51 games last year. This year, production down slightly, 12 goals, 32 points in 50 games. Not a big banger, 6'1", 179, but plays hard. I could see him as a fourth line guy. Nick Lynham just mentioned Anthony Mantha. I've been talking about him the last little while. Like, there's a 6'5", 234-pound offside winger that has some bite to his game. Pending UFA in Washington. Washington probably not going to make the playoffs. So, and again, I think Mantha's a guy the Jets have had on their radar previously, whether it's his draft year or one of the years where he was moved initially. So, yeah, I do think they need to move. And again, it's not. I'm not saying the Jets are struggling in these areas, but if you want to beat the caliber of team, we know how good the rosters were, Sean. The year the Oilers got swept, we know Draisaitl was hurt, but look at the Oilers roster this year compared to the roster in 2022 when they got bounced. Look at the Oilers this year compared to last year when they pushed Vegas to 6 games. And for the Jets to even get to Vegas or Edmonton or Vancouver, they're going to probably have to beat one of, if not both of, Dallas and Colorado. So, I think the roster needs a little bit of a shot in the arm. This is a great roster. They've got a bunch of guys who play hard for each other. They have a lot of great qualities as a team. But you're talking about 4 rounds of playoffs, Sean. 4 rounds is a long time. And you'd have to have a lot of guys going at a lot of times. The Jets had a lot of guys going in 2 different rounds, and then they had a lot of guys go quiet in the 3rd round against Vegas. And that's natural for young players. So I do think they're going to have to add for sure to augment their forward group. And I do think that the Jets' defense could use an upgrade, whether you're looking at a 3rd pairing guy or potentially a 2nd and then shuffling some things around. I don't know exactly how Kevin Cheveldayoff feels about that or how Rick Bowness feels. For a long time, we've been hearing that the Jets wanted to give Ville Heinola a test run before the trade deadline, but that doesn't seem like it's likely going to happen. So does that mean, Sean, that they're going to leave that $800,000 to $1 million of cap room open to recall him after the 23-man roster is set? Or after the deadline, where you can call up players as long as you fit them under the cap? I don't know, but it seems likely that if they haven't done it until now, that they're probably going to wait until after the deadline is over. And by then, they want to be drilling down on the details for whoever else is brought in if they bring in somebody else. So it's going to be a fascinating week ahead. Like I said, I'm not expecting the Jets to add 3 or 4 or 5 players, but I would be surprised if they don't bring in 1 forward and 1 defenseman. Now, what level of player that is, we know that it'll be a high character player, and probably someone with some size and some bite. But it also would not hurt them to get a little bit more offense into the lineup, especially depending on what's going on with Velarde's injury here. This is a guy who has been a very good player for the Jets whenever he's been in the lineup, outside of the times when he's been banged up.
Well,
and sorry, this is a great question or a great point by Baby Yoda. Maybe Dallas just seems to up their game whenever they what? I'm not sure. Sorry. Whenever they get to the playoffs. When they play the Jets, maybe it looks like maybe.
No, I think he's saying that about the playoffs, and this is actually something I wanted to talk about because we can say all we want about the Winnipeg Jets, and you'll have to clear that off when it's time there, Ken. But we can say all we want about the Jets kind of sleepwalking through the wins that they've been getting against lesser teams over the last little while. And I don't know, someone was trying to make the point, thought they had a gotcha moment there when they were talking about like half the teams in the league being below the playoff line and the Jets winning and all this kind of stuff. Like I said, 5 of their last 6 games against teams over the playoff line, they've lost. Like that's pretty damning to me. You know what I mean? Like if you are not able to beat the teams above the playoff line, the teams that you will be playing in that's the difference. If you're trying to figure out what I'm saying is the difference, the teams below the playoff line, you're not gonna have to play them in the playoffs. The teams above the playoff line, you're playing in the playoffs. And if you're going 5 losses out of your last 6 games against those teams, it's probably saying where your game is right now. So what we've seen from the Winnipeg Jets for a while here is a team that's able to just muster enough to get past bottom feeding teams, and then they haven't been able to do it when it's good teams. And this point about the Stars, I think, is an important one, because why I have talked about and why the last 4 or 5 shows, a lot of the conversations we've been having, Ken, is around the Jets and like letting the standards slide, is like the idea that the Jets, okay, can they turn it on? Because in the past, that's been the problem with them. The Jets, when I say it time and again, when their foot slips off the gas pedal, they have a hard time finding it again. That's the history of the Winnipeg Jets. Go back and look it up. That's what we know from the Winnipeg Jets. That's not the Dallas Stars. The Dallas Stars are a team that goes through these little lulls like they've been going through before this game. And then when it comes playoff time, they find a way. The Stanley Cup year that they go and lose to the Tampa Bay Lightning, they just turn it on. They find it at the right time and they go. They show up at the right time. They're always a tough out in the playoffs. And so tonight to me is just an example of, listen, the Jets have been playing, mediocre hockey, although they've been resulting in wins. The Dallas Stars have been playing mediocre hockey. It's been resulting in losses. I think a lot of people in Winnipeg were kind of patting themselves on the back and saying, hey, we're a good team. We know how to find a way to win. And these other teams didn't. Well, on this night, when two teams looked at each other and said, okay, enough messing around like we've been doing. It's time to raise our games. It was the Dallas Stars who raised their game higher, and they've got the muscle memory to do that. And that is the final frontier for the Winnipeg Jets, is finding a way to make sure that when they really need their best against the best, that they find it. Dallas Stars have a history of doing that. The Winnipeg Jets don't. That's why I bring that up all the time. That's why I think it's a concern. Ken, we should talk.
Sorry, just to that point that you said. I mean, Rick Bowness made it clear. We haven't brought our A game against them. There's just not enough guys tonight. And in those games, they've brought their A game. A B game is not going to beat them. And they've played better than we have all year, basically. So, no, you cannot beat the Stars without your best. And the Jets haven't found their best against them. They have found their best against some elite teams in the NHL this year. So, yes, I mean, you got to play who's on your schedule. They've played very well against Boston, against some of those other teams, but they've also stumbled against some of the best teams. So there's work to be done, and there's work to be done for every team in the league. That's why it's so wide open this year.
Ken, I'm going to go and pat myself on the back the same way so many people in our chat room were patting the Jets on the back for finding a way to win against some of the bottom teams in the league, with our commentary the last little while, where we've talked about why the Jets barely slipping past the Arizona Coyotes and the Chicago Blackhawks and teams like that and not playing their game properly, why that matters. I think it's good analysis that shows up in a game like this, and people kind of see on display what the issues are. I'll say telling the truth in that case really paid off. And if you're looking to pay off high interest credit cards or debt, we suggest you go talk to our friends at Cambrian Credit Union about their payoff loan. They can show you how starting out or how taking out a loan to pay off your debt actually gets you debt free faster, and you can save thousands of dollars. Go to cambrian.mb.ca to book an appointment online. And just a reminder, Ken, we don't talk about it as much anymore, but we don't just talk about Cambrian because they're a sponsor of this show. Yep. Both you and I are customers of theirs. Both you and I have a mortgage there. Both you, I mean, I think our household has like 6 or 7 accounts with them, including all my kids. We've been, we're putting our money where our mouth is in this kind of situation. We're not telling you to go someplace where we wouldn't, or don't know that there's great service. We absolutely know that. So always great to have Cambrian on board. The line splitting, Ken, what did you make of it? What did you think that Rick Bowness was trying to achieve? And do you think he came anywhere near close, or do you think he was on to anything with any of the moves?
Well, I just think that it was one of the nights where the Jets had too many passengers, and I think he was just looking for answers. Much like we say before, when you put a worker bee like Vladislav Nemesnikov on the top line, you want some of those other guys to get moving. And we talked about it. Mark Scheifele had a great game against Vancouver. He had another 4-pointer sandwiched in there. But this was not a night where Mark Scheifele was a dominant player. And in a game against Dallas, the Jets need their Mark Scheifele to be Mark Scheifele if they want to beat the Dallas Stars. They need Kyle Connor to be a dangerous sniper. I didn't think either one of those guys was really rolling today. Again, this is not blaming one or two players. Nikolai Ehlers was not at his best today. And even Sean Monahan, I made a couple nice plays, but he wasn't as dominant a player as he has been. So again, the Jets did not have enough guys going, so the blender is also out, Sean. And Rick Bowness was very vehement when I asked him about it. A lot of it was because Velarde was out of the mix because of the injury. But none of those guys were really playing that well together. So you're just sort of, the blender was on the industrial strength spin cycle. Do I think they landed on anything they're going to use on Saturday? I have no idea. I don't think so. But I do wonder what, who's first in? Is it Kapari? Is it David Gustafson? Because he's played his 6 games. And maybe they want to move, if they want to move Nemestikov up the lineup, Sean, then you're going to have Gustafson probably centering the 4th line. I mean, you could have Kapari there also, but Rick Bowness didn't like his face-off numbers. So, which way are you going to lean if you're going to do that? And now you're playing a team in Carolina that I think has been pretty hot coming out of the break and pushing their way up in their division and in the conference. So, and also I have no idea who he's going to, here's another chance. Now, do you put Ehlers back on the top line, or do you want to keep that balance because you've seen chemistry with Ehlers and Monahan lately, and then you kind of see what you want to do with the rest of it between Perfetti and between Nemesnikov and maybe between Niederreiter, who got a bump up as well. So I'm curious what they're going to do. I don't have a great answer for you right now. And just a quick one, Jason Guralnik. Yes, Andrew Kopp played right out of college, but he finished his junior year and played 1 game in the NHL that year. He wasn't asked to jump on to a top 6 line coming into the NHL, nor was he asked, and nor is Rutger McGroarty, for as many skills as he has as a young player. Andrew Kopp's an elite defensive player, which is why Andrew Kopp didn't need to spend time in the American Hockey League. Anyways, don't mean to be sidetracked. I'm curious what the Jets are going to do with the lines. And Sean, I have no idea. I have no idea what they're going to do.
We know the analytics haven't looked good on the first line for a while. And listen, I know that Huss had said this. I was on a Twitter chain with him, and I agreed with this. Like, as long as the Jets kept winning, and as long as that first line was scoring their way to winning, it's hard to snap that and break that up. But if I were a coach who was taking a look at that line and seeing how often they were basically on the wrong side of all the stats except for the scoreboard, I would be looking for an opportunity to maybe try something different. Now, maybe Gabe Velarde and his injury are going to force that anyway. But I don't know. I take a look at that scenario, and I think the Jets, that top line tonight, got a little bit exposed, and to be honest with you, had been getting exposed to a degree in some of the games against inferior competition, but they just are so quick strike capable that they were scoring their way out of problems that they were creating. That doesn't last for long, and it definitely doesn't last against good teams the way that it was lasting against some of the bottom feeders in the NHL. I just wanted to, or you want to talk about top line media
just quickly,
which says T. Will, you can't burn the last cheap years of 55 and 37, especially with 37 playing at this level. You have to buy. I couldn't agree more. To me, the thing about this is where the Jets are now. They've basically said, and listen, the Jets like to pay good mind to the future. It's done well for them. But having invested the way they have with Mark Scheifele and Connor Hellebuck and trying to open up this window and them being good right now, like they're 30-year-old players coming up now. Now, this is great, right? At 30, Blake Wheeler looked absolutely impenetrable, just a dominant hockey player. There's potential within, it's not unheard of for 33-year-old players to tail off, right? So if Mark Scheifele starts tailing off by the age of 33, you can't be surprised about it. I think that he's going to be one of those guys who lasts pretty long because of his commitment, because of his health, because of the way he prepares, his nutrition, all those kind of things. But if they slow down at 33, it's actually the norm. He'd be an outlier if he wasn't doing that. So these are the years. This is it now. And if the Jets are sitting, hovering around first place in the NHL, and that's not enough for them to take a look and say, hey, we need to go for this, I don't know what is. I don't think they're doing it right. I mean, the Jets have done a good job of staying relevant for a really long time, but at some point, when you got a good poker hand, you got to push your chips into the middle of the table. And listen, this coming from the guy last year who I remember on this podcast against a lot of the people who were not agreeing with it.
Or me.
Or you saying they needed to go in, they needed to go all in. And I said they didn't earn the right for their GM to go all in, falling apart the way they had. They've earned it this year. There's no questions left. The Winnipeg Jets have shown their general manager that they're a capable team, that they're playing the right way, that they're committed down the stretch, that they're not going to like drop everything the way that they did in years past. And you have to reward that. So I think there's a couple moves, if not three moves left for Kevin Cheveldayoff to make here. That would be my expectation. I just wanted to bring this up here because boring Sean Monahan with a very unboring comment here where he says, sometimes Renny is insufferable. Tonight is one of those nights. I got to tell you, boring Sean Monahan, I can feel your frustration and it feeds me. It just keeps me alive. This is a good night because I know somewhere out there, boring Sean Monahan is stabbing himself under the table with a fork. It's a picture that just brings a smile to my face. Ken, let's get to the Johnston Group got you covered play of the game. It's a good one.
Oh, it is it ever. And for those who didn't see or will hear or watch or read or whatever else, I asked Pete DeBoer about Brendan Dillon this morning, and he basically said he's one of his favorite people that he's ever coached, and he was not the least bit surprised that he's blossomed into a top 4 defenseman in this league. And then Brendan Dillon just went out and made one exceptional play. This is why we always talk about value added. This play will not show up in any box score, but it will show up in every single highlight reel for a coaching staff, showing its players how to box out, how to give maximum effort. The Jets had just killed off the front end of a 5-on-3. There's a shot on goal that is stopped by Connor Hellebuck, and Matt Duchene's eyes got about this big when he saw a rebound kick out, but Brendan Dillon has his head on a swivel, finds Matt Duchene's stick, and absolutely outmuscles him to prevent a backdoor tap-in for a power play goal to keep the Jets in the game. I love the play. It embodies everything we talk about when it comes to the Johnston Group got you covered play of the game, because it is something that is a selfless act that takes great awareness and kept the Jets in this game, even though they were not able to bounce back in it or rally to win it. But that's just an exceptional play that Sean, he didn't quit on the play, and that's a play you're going to have to make in the Stanley Cup playoffs if you want to be a successful team.
Great comment here by Winnipeg Gabriel Vivaldi, who says some players are 39 and still relevant against us. Awesome timing to point that out. I think you nailed that. Brendan Dillon closing that out. That's a goal. And it was Duchene, right?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, great player with great hands around the net. He's made his money there, and that's just an absolutely
23 snips
play.
This year for Duchene.
No doubt. That is a perfect representative of the We've Got You Covered Johnston Group play of the game, no doubt. And hey, do you run a small business in Canada? Look to Canada's #1 employee benefits plan, Chambers Plan, to give you a competitive edge. Chambers Plan is the simple, stable, smart choice for over 30,000 businesses countrywide. Visit chamberplan.ca to learn more. That's the Chamber Plan. Johnston Group got you covered play of the game. The Kenny and Renny OGs. Ken, let's mix it up a little and go with the lamplighter next.
Yeah, my temptation is to, build on what Gabriel Vivaldi has just referenced in the absolutely absurd and ridiculous redirection by Joe Pavelski. But I'm going to the blue paint special from Logan Stankoven. He whacked the puck out of the air before Wyatt Johnston could, and Johnston was the guy who was closer to the puck. And for a guy who's 5'8", he goes to all the hard areas. I talked to a lot of people around the Stars today. They just love this guy. In some circumstances, Sean, not only might Stankoven have been ready this year before he went to the American League, he might have been ready last year.
Yeah.
But the Kamloops Blazers were hosting the Memorial Cup. He's a Kamloops guy. They didn't have to rush him because they have a bunch of offensive players, and it didn't really make sense for him to be a bottom 6 forward, even though he's a digger. I loved everything about the Stankoven play. He was battling that whole shift. He made an incredible saucer pass before the initial scoring chance on that play, and then got to the front of the net and won a great big battle in front to score. So that's why it's my
Yeah.
lamplighter. It's a
the
beauty.
way
Absolute beauty.
the way he starts it, quite often, if I'm picking a lamplighter, I'll go and I'll pick a play that it may not be the prettiest, but it's the right one, the kind of goal that as a hockey coach you're looking at and saying, now that's a goal, right? So many things done right by that hockey player, and it's just one right move on one right move on one right move on one right move that adds up to a goal. It's not, a lot of sometimes we've been seeing offense recently from the top line of the Jets where, they're getting caved in their own end. They head down the other way, get a good balance, boom, it's in the back of the net, right? Like those are the things that you can't expect to happen over and over again. If you're Logan Stankoven and you're making the plays that he made that added up to that goal and that play, that's going to happen over and over and over again. Boy, oh boy, it's going to drive some people nuts. And I know some people hate it when we talk about players on other teams or other teams, period, on this podcast. But boy, oh boy, the Dallas Stars have a player in Logan Stankoven, and the Jets are going to be dealing with that in the Central Division for years to come. Couldn't agree more that is the lamplighter of the game, but it doesn't matter. A lot of people out there are going to pick Nemesnikov because it's the only Jets goal. A lot of people will go in whatever direction they want. That's the thing you got to do. Go in whatever direction you want. Tell us what your lamplighter of the game is, and you are automatically entered to win a frosty, delicious 8-pack of Lamplighter Amber Ale, brought to you by our friends at TransCanada Brewing Company. If you can't wait for Kenny and Renny to gift you your 8-pack, head on down to TransCanada Brewing Company. Join them in their tap room at 1290 Keniston Avenue. Keniston Boulevard, where we will be having our final live K&R podcast on April 6th. It's going to be a great event. If you haven't got your tickets, go out and get them now. Just search Kenny and Renny Eventbrite April 6th, and it will pop up. You can get those tickets, and we will see you in the room. Small room show. It's capped. Can't turn it into a big room show like we have in the past. So there's a limited amount of tickets. So make sure you get in there before it's all sold out. Winner of the lamplighter from the last game, that would be one Tracy O'Kranick. Tracy, you know what to do.
Direct well done, Tracy.
And Sean Reynolds. Send me your full name and send me an email. I will send you a voucher for a frosty, delicious 8-pack of Lamplighter Amber Ale, brought to you by our friends at TransCanada Brewing Company. Ken, that means it's time for the keg save of the game. What do you got?
Honestly, it didn't end up making a huge difference, but I just love the fact that Connor Hellebuck stood tall right out of the gate. His stop on Mason Marchment on that breakaway is what I'm going to go with. There were some other saves that were big after the game was 3-0 and 3-1. But to me, in a game where the Jets actually had a pretty good start, and on that same shift, they had a great scoring chance, Iafallo's redirection is kicked out by Ottinger, and then Marchment all of a sudden sneaks behind the defense, just like Rick Bowness said they do. He said they fly the zone all the time. And lo and behold, less than 5 minutes in, there's Mason Marchment on a breakaway. So the fact that, and some people would say Marchment didn't make a great move. Hellebuck just stared him down, and he basically shot it right into his pads. But that was a big save in the early part of the contest, and sort of allowed the Jets to still stabilize after having a good start, even though shortly thereafter they kind of came apart at the seams with 3 self-inflicted wounds. But that's why I'm going with that save as my keg save of the game.
I'll go with it. I do agree with you, Ken. And I said it again. I'll say it again. Sorry, I said it before. I'll say it again. I do think Connor Hellebuck was the better goalie in this game here tonight. I just don't think that the Jets tested Ottinger enough. I think it's probably something we didn't talk enough about on this podcast, like the opportunities that they did get in the second period. I thought that's the right way to do things, to kind of just get some traffic in front of the net and start trying to get the puck to the net. But there was far too much coming from the outside, and far too many times that Jake Ottinger was able to see what was coming in on him, whereas the Stars had a number of other opportunities. Like you'd said, could have been 5-1 for the Stars in that game, not including the empty net goal. I couldn't agree with you more. A couple 2-on-1s, a lot of opportunities there that Connor Hellebuck absolutely shut down. and I guess you got to give Brendan Dillon his credit, but we already covered that off with the Johnson Group. Got you covered play of the game. So I guess I'll just go along with you for the keg save of the game. We agree, which is always a beautiful thing.
Are you feeling
on
okay?
KNR? but it doesn't matter if we agree. What matters is what your keg save of the game is. So share with us your hashtag the keg save of the game, and you are automatically entered to win a $50 gift certificate usable at any of the 3 fine keg locations here in the city of Winnipeg, each location finer than the last. And the winner of that $50 gift certificate is a guy who often disagrees with us. And let it be known at the first KNR podcast this year, live podcast this year, Ken, T. Konapali. The mouth of the South, I would call him, except he lives up north. T. Konapali, you have won yourself a $50 gift certificate usable at any of the 3 fine keg locations here in the city of Winnipeg. Each location finer than the last. But if you want it, you got to direct message me at SN Sean Reynolds. And because I know that you don't have Twitter, but you do have my email, T. Kona, get a hold of me by email, and I will have the keg send you your very own $50 voucher to the keg, any 3 keg locations in the city of Winnipeg, each location finer than the last. Kenny, this is the closest we're going to get to getting out of here on time. So anything to say before we go?
No, I would say that I love the honesty from Dylan DeMello. One of the last quotes he gave to me was a great one. I said, not necessarily a wake-up call, but kind of one of this is, to me, it's a great challenge for the Jets. This was his response. We maybe got away with some things in our game that were uncharacteristic. I don't want to say lesser opponents, but we got away with some things maybe in previous games where today we're down 3-0 in a heartbeat when we're not making the right plays and not making the right reads, and it kind of bit us in the butt when we were doing those things. So yeah, a bit of a wake-up call, but I think at the same time, we understand what we did wrong, and this group is pretty good at rectifying it. So hopefully we can have a short memory here in regards to a big game on Sunday. So much like Brendan Dillon after the last game, Sean, the recognition is the difference. This isn't just the Jets saying there's nothing to see here, it's an off night, we were fine, maybe we had bad luck, maybe we had bad travel, maybe. This is absolute clear sight, knowing that you need to be better. And I know it's not just after the game. Adam Lowry told me this morning, yeah, the Jets won 4 in a row and 7 of 8, but they didn't feel like they were at their standard or at their level. Now they didn't get to their level today. And the flip side of this, Sean, Matt Duchene thought the Stars had been playing better than their record during this last stretch, even though they weren't getting rewarded for it, and did get their ass kicked by the Colorado Avalanche. So I think there was recognition there, and that's why I expect the Jets to be sharper, and they better be sharper, because we know what happened last time they rolled in to Carolina. Their top line got sat for the majority of a period, and it was part of the spiral.
No doubt. And like I said, they're another top NHL team, which the Jets haven't fared well against as of late. Again, last 6 games against teams above the playoff line, the Jets have lost 5 of those. So they need to start showing again that they are competitive when they play those top teams. I wanted to say this one last time, bring up boring Sean Monahan, whose comment was anything but boring when he says, sometimes Renny is insufferable. Tonight is one of those nights. I just have to pick at this scab again, Ken. I wonder if it drives people like boring Sean Monahan nuts. When games ago we talk about the Jets not playing well, and everyone talks about how crazy we are and that we're nitpicking and they won and you guys are always so negative. I wonder if it drives people like boring Sean Monahan nuts when the stuff that we say in this podcast, which the Jets and their coach don't say at the beginning, and then finally they come out and say, yeah, we haven't been playing well. I wonder if that drives people like boring Sean Monahan nuts. I'm going to be honest, Ken. I hope it does. I truly hope it does. Anyways, folks, that's enough for Heel Renny on this night. Time for us to get out of here. We do really appreciate everybody joining us here. Just stay tuned. It's going to be a little bit weird. Renny got co-opted into the Hockey Night in Canada Montreal Canadiens beat. So I'm off to Tampa tomorrow, and I'll be in Tampa for Saturday night for Hockey Night in Canada. It's an afternoon game for the Jets. I'm going to be in the middle of a broadcast day, which is going to make it really difficult for me to pull off being there. So it's either going to be Ken going early or me going late after the Canadians game. We will let you know what it's going to be at some point, but stay tuned for that because it may be a little bit of a different day or maybe right on timing after the game, just without Renny involved, which would probably make someone like Sean Monahan a little bit boring Sean Monahan a little bit happier on a night like tonight. Anyways, Ken, great job to the chat room. And if you appreciate the conversations happening in this space, please appreciate our sponsors who fight to keep the conversation going in this space for us. That's Vittorio Rossi, Pristine Roofing, Cambrian Credit Union, Sweet Lou Ferlin, the Kenny and Renny OGs in the Johnson Group, and of course the Keg and Trans-Canada Brewing Company. Thank you to them. Thank you to all of you. We love to chat with you and do it all over again when the Jets have their next big test Saturday afternoon against the Carolina Hurricanes. Love to see you after that. Bye-bye.